Breaking tonight, Canada's political landscape just shifted beneath everyone's feet. A Liberal Prime Minister and a Conservative Premier aren't fighting each other. They're planning together. Tensions are mounting across the country tonight. The Globe and Mail has revealed that Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford have held multiple private conversations about one of the most consequential political moves in recent Canadian history: a snap federal election. Not sometime down the road, not as a distant possibility, now. Everyone believed Canadian politics would remain paralyzed by minority government gridlock. Pundits expected Carney to play it safe, manage his two-seat deficit, negotiate bill by bill, amendment by amendment. Analysts assumed Doug Ford, a Conservative premier, would keep his distance from a Liberal Prime Minister, maintaining the traditional partisan firewall that has defined federal-provincial relations for decades. They were all utterly incorrect. Ottawa, January 29, 2026. At the First Minister's meeting, something happened that wasn't on any official agenda. Behind closed doors, away from cameras and microphones, Mark Carney and Doug Ford talked numbers. Poll numbers, personal approval ratings, the kind of data that doesn't just inform political decisions, it drives them. And the numbers told a devastating story for Pierre Poilievre. Carney leads him by as much as 29 points as preferred Prime Minister. 29. The Liberals hold a lead of between 4 and 9 percentage points over the Conservatives in every major tracking poll. Ford, who won his own third majority by calling an early election on the argument that Canada needed a strong mandate against Trump, looked at those numbers and reportedly told Carney something very direct. Translation: go get your majority, do it now, before the window closes. And what happened next reveals something far more significant than election timing. It reveals that Canada is undergoing a political centralization unlike anything we've seen in modern history. Not along party lines, but along a single axis: national survival in the Trump era. Dear viewers, let me be absolutely clear about what's actually happening here. This is not a story about a Liberal and a Conservative becoming friends. This is not about Doug Ford endorsing the federal Liberal Party. Ford's office was careful not to frame it that way, and we shouldn't either. This is about something much bigger. What we're witnessing is a crisis reflex. When a country faces sustained external pressure, and make no mistake, Donald Trump's trade war constitutes exactly that, internal fragmentation stops being a political reality and starts becoming a national security liability. Canada right now is looking at its minority parliament the way a captain looks at a cracked hull in a storm. You don't debate the crack, you seal it. Ford understands this instinctively. He called his own early election for precisely this reason. He told Ontario voters he needed a mandate to take on Trump, and they gave him one, a third consecutive majority. Now he's watching Carney navigate the same storm with a boat that has a hole in it, 2 seats short, dependent on opposition cooperation, vulnerable to a confidence vote at any moment. And here's what makes this conversation so revealing. Ford didn't tell Carney to call an election because he wants the Liberals to win. He told him because he believes Canada cannot afford a distracted government right now. The USMCA renegotiations are approaching. Trump's tariff threats continue to escalate. The economic uncertainty gripping Canadian businesses demands decisive federal action, not parliamentary horse trading. This is governance logic, not partisan logic. And that distinction matters enormously. Now let's talk about what the Conservatives are doing, because their reaction tells you everything about how seriously they're taking this threat. Pierre Poilievre just secured 87.4% support in his party's leadership vote at the Conservative Convention. That's a commanding number. But commanding internal support and commanding the electorate are two very different things, and the Conservative Party knows it. They're already moving on early nominations. Some MPs are reportedly looking at renting campaign offices. They're not waiting for an election call. They're preparing for one. That's not the behavior of a party that thinks a snap election is unlikely. That's the behavior of a party that thinks it's imminent. And here's the strategic problem Poilievre faces. He's actually become more cooperative with the Liberals in recent weeks, offering to work together on legislation like tougher bail reform. Under normal circumstances, that would be smart politics. Show Canadians you're reasonable. Position yourself as a constructive opposition leader. But in this environment, cooperation actually undermines the Liberals' best argument for an election. Think about it. If Poilievre is working with the government, why does Carney need a majority? The answer, of course, is that cooperation on individual bills doesn't solve the structural problem. A minority government facing the most aggressive American administration in living memory cannot plan long-term. It cannot make commitments in trade negotiations that survive a confidence vote. It cannot project the kind of unified national strength that deterrence requires. As pollster Nick Nanos put it, Carney likely views the minority status as a risky distraction from his efforts to remake and reshape the Canadian economy. And Nanos identified the most probable trigger, something said by Trump himself, a provocation, a threat, a tariff announcement that gives Carney the justification to go to Canadians and say, I need your full authority to respond to this. Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Gardner pushed back hard, calling any potential election entirely manufactured and opportunistic. She pointed out that both Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau managed to make minority parliaments work. And she's not wrong about the historical precedent, but she's missing the context that makes this moment fundamentally different. Harper didn't face a hostile American president threatening to annex his country. Trudeau's minorities didn't coincide with the most significant trade disruption in North American history. The comparison fails precisely because it assumes normal conditions, and nothing about the Trump era is normal. Let me walk you through the math that's keeping conservative strategists awake at night. Carney's Liberals fell short of a majority last April, primarily because they couldn't break through in the suburban ridings around the Greater Toronto area, Ford's political backyard. Now think about what Ford's implicit support means in those specific ridings. Not an endorsement, not a campaign appearance, just the signal, the unmistakable signal, that the Conservative Premier of Ontario isn't opposed to a Liberal majority in Ottawa. For voters in Mississauga, Brampton, Markham, and Oakville, who split their tickets between provincial Conservatives and federal parties, that signal removes the last psychological barrier. If Doug Ford thinks Carney needs a majority to protect Ontario's economy, why would an Ontario voter disagree? That's the calculation. And it's devastating for Poilievre in exactly the ridings he needs most. There's also the structural opportunity that's materializing right now. 2 seats are about to open through by-elections. Chrystia Freeland's former riding and Bill Blair's seat, now vacant after his appointment as High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. 2 Conservative MPs crossed the floor to the Liberals last fall. Another Conservative MP has announced a spring resignation. The political terrain is shifting underneath the Conservatives in real time. Every week that passes, the Liberal position strengthens incrementally. And in politics, momentum is its own justification. Now, dear viewers, let me tell you what I think this really means for Canada's future. Because this isn't just about one election. This is about a fundamental question that every democracy facing external pressure must answer. Can you afford internal division when a hostile power is testing your resolve? Canada's answer increasingly is no. And the evidence isn't just in these private conversations between Carney and Ford. It's in the polling. It's in the first ministers' meetings where premiers from different parties joke about federal numbers rather than attack them. It's in the way provincial leaders, who should be Carney's opponents, are instead quietly hoping he consolidates power. This is not normal. In any other era, a Conservative premier helping a Liberal prime minister think through election timing would be a scandal. Today, it barely registers as surprising. That tells you how fundamentally the Trump threat has reorganized Canadian political psychology. If this election happens, and the signals are growing louder by the day, Canada will have made a declaration that echoes far beyond its borders. It will have said that in the Trump era, governance isn't done through endless compromise and fragile coalitions. It's done with clear authority, with a mandate so unambiguous that no American negotiator can look across the table and wonder whether the Canadian Prime Minister actually speaks for his country. Ford gets this. He lived it. He went to Ontario voters and said, "Give me the power to fight Trump," and they did. Now he's telling Carney the same thing, and the only question left is whether Carney agrees with the timing. Based on everything we're seeing tonight, the private conversations, the poll numbers, the conservative scramble to prepare, the by-elections that need to be called regardless, the answer is becoming clearer by the hour. Canada isn't drifting toward an election. Canada is building the case for one, brick by brick, poll by poll, conversation by conversation. And when the trigger comes, and it will come, because Trump always provides one, the machinery will already be in place. The country that spent the last year proving it could withstand American economic pressure is now preparing to prove something else entirely, that it can make hard political decisions faster than Washington expects, that a democracy under threat doesn't fracture, it consolidates, and that the leader who earns a clear mandate in a crisis isn't just a prime minister. He's a signal to the world that Canada has chosen unity over uncertainty, strength over speculation, and decisive action over parliamentary paralysis. The question isn't whether this election will happen. The question is whether the Conservatives can adapt fast enough when it does. If you've been following this channel, you already know Canada doesn't just react to pressure, it transforms under it. And tonight, we may be watching the next transformation begin. Stay informed, stay sharp, and stay with us, because this story is moving fast, and we'll be here every step of the way.